Atlanta, you're listening to the Abbie Knights Morning Show, the #1 party show in the city.
I got tons of soul on my true collectible. Famous, so famous, #1 desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got tons of soul on my true collectible. Famous, so famous, #1 desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got change to throw, I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping incredible. Always on the show so they know that I still got.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with Devon McKinney. How you doing today?
I'm good. Excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited to be talking to you today. Your resume is like miles long. I know you've accomplished so much throughout your journey so far, but I wanted to dive into a little bit. What was the reason? I mean, obviously we'll dive into what you've been doing with Nike and all that in a little bit, but why bourbon? Of all things that you could possibly do, why transition into the bourbon space?
So it's a great question, and you're not the first one to ask. But yeah, the interesting thing is actually there's a lot more similarities to bourbon and kind of what I do. Say my day job with sneakers and some of the industries I've worked with in the past than people think. And so for a few reasons, I guess. The first one is, and actually before I get to that, look, I love bourbon. It's my favorite spirit, always has been.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, it's probably like the only whiskey, I should say, is like the only spirit that I feel like you can nuance to the level of maybe wine or another kind of like, I guess food or culinary experience. And so, that's my personal just like love with it. But in terms of like how maybe I got involved and why I got involved. Yeah, so I mean, look, my entire career has been built around creating no pun intended, but like a thirst for products. I promise I didn't mean that one. Yeah, so like, and I love making stuff that makes others feel joy and feel like they have to have it and makes them feel special and ultimately is something that they can share. And so in the same way that, in the industries I've worked in and primarily right now, like sneakers, people get extremely excited and like line up and create communities around that product. The exact same thing happens in bourbon, right? And so, and not to kind of jump ahead, but that was a little bit of the premise of the brand is like, hey, can we just like, it's kind of already there in terms of like this really amazing energy and community around it, but like how do we start to kind of formalize it a bit and kind of connect those two worlds? So that's kind of like I think the gist of it for me. Like yeah, ultimately making cool shit, hopefully I'm allowed to say that, but
yeah, you're totally fine.
and so I think that's what I aspire to do is bring amazing new things to people, and this was more of just like an extension of what I've been doing, I guess.
And it looks incredible. I haven't had the chance to try it yet, but I hear amazing things about it. How
Thank
was
you.
Blue Run Spirits founded and why that name?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one actually. So I have 4 partners, and we're kind of spread out a little bit, and we're kind of at the beginning, we were kind of connected a little bit loosely, right? We kind of like some knew each other, some didn't, we kind of all pulled together because we all have pretty different backgrounds. But 2 of my partners, Mike Montgomery, who's our CEO, and Jesse, who's kind of our Renaissance man. He's our Kentucky guy, running kind of operations and stuff out there. But it kind of started with them, right? And Jesse being like, he's got a background all over the place, but primarily in politics. And so that being said, he knows kind of like everybody in Kentucky, which is amazing. You walk
Yeah.
down the street, and he's from Georgetown, Kentucky. You walk down the street and he's like the mayor. It's wild. But him and Mike actually had an opportunity to kind of like acquire, which doesn't really happen too often, but to acquire like some amazing bourbon that had been aging for, at that time, I think 12 years, which is also like pretty rare to find. Not only like product that's been aged that long and is up for sale, but is actually like of a really high quality. And so again, they weren't looking to get into it, but they had it there, and they're like, God, like we feels like we should do something with this. And so they called a few of us up and was like, hey, can we put a team together and get something going? And so that's kind of like the very beginnings of it. And more specifically, I guess, how I got involved. I've known Mike for a long time. Actually, his wife and my wife are cousins, so we have like a little bit of a family connection there. But he's in LA. And I think on his way to work, or part of his life route in LA, he drives down Fairfax, La Brea, that area, LA, which is kind of where all the streetwear companies are, all the amazing sneaker boutiques. And he was and Supreme, and like these kind of industries and brands that I've worked with. And I think his whole thing was like, dang, like I see lines like, every day, like, what is this, and he looked into it a little bit more, and he's like, I think this is like the stuff that Devon works on. And so again, it kind of goes back to like the original conversation. Like from there, we're just like, hey, like, is there similarities here between these industries? And is there something we can kind of do with it? And so it got me excited, of course. And that was kind of like the beginning of my relationship with I guess Mike in an official kind of business way, and the team. And then kind of from there, again, it was like, after we had decided like, let's do this thing, then it was just like all hands on deck. And for me, I think like right off the bat, it was, look, the opportunity is pretty clear. I think you go into any liquor store or bar, and if you look at the shelf, it all looks, and kind of putting the liquid and the quality of the bourbon aside, the look of bourbon is all the same. It really is, and for good or for bad, that's not a knock necessarily. It's a very historic and kind of like deeply American product, and I think that's generally the story that's been celebrated almost exclusively, right? Which is my grandpappy's recipe from the early 1900s or 1800s. We found it in the attic, and now we're bringing it back to life. And you have like this really old story, and I think the packaging and again the brands really kind of celebrate that and look like that, right? Which, to be honest, like feels a little bit old, and that's not necessarily what we wanted to do. I think again, our passion for the product and the opportunity was bringing it to maybe a different audience, and quite frankly, like we didn't have that story, and we were never going to have that story. So like, we also wanted to make sure we were being authentic and bring it into a bit of a modern space and a newer space, and our values and maybe our mission was very clear, like right off the bat, of kind of changing things up a bit.
Yeah, there's not a lot of nuance in that space, is there? It's very
there's
traditional.
Not. There really isn't.
The older standard of what bourbon is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like, and who's supposed to share it. And it's kind of cool to see the transition over time from the perception then and where it kind of should be now, which is so cool to what you guys are doing, because it's innovative to this space. I mean, I don't know of any brands that handwrite 5,000 thank you notes. That's crazy.
It's pretty incredible. That's all Mike, by the way. I was like, when he first came up with that, I was like, you're crazy. Like, that's unheard of. But no, it's amazing, and again, that's one of the things we wanted to ground ourselves in, is
Hmm.
just like, we can create a personal experience. I mean, we're not Maker's Mark, we're not Jim Beam,
Yeah.
and so it's like, um, why couldn't we kind of like have a personal, almost like conversation or dialogue with the people that are enjoying us on our product, or not, to be completely honest, and like,
Yeah.
and that's, something that I've always held like really tight,
Yeah.
and kind of dear to me, as just being like focused on consumer products and just
Hmm.
listening to the consumer. It seems so simple, but like, I think a lot of brands overlook that. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you really want to get better, you need to listen to the people that are buying your product, right?
Yeah, and having that personal touch is very meaningful too, because it makes you feel
Yeah,
special when you get the product. You don't feel like you're just
absolutely.
another
Yeah.
customer. And I mean, I'm so excited for what you guys are going to be doing. Your slogan, drink better, drink together. It's the beginning of bourbon. It's kind of like a rebirth of something that we've known to be so traditional for so many years. What was the process behind the bottle?
Yeah, the bottle took a while. I went through quite a few iterations. And actually, before we landed on Blue Run as a name, we kind of went through a few different things. Actually, the first name that I was like super gung ho about, and I wanted, and it still rings true, I think, to our name and to our brand. But I wanted to create something just like super iconic and simple. And at the beginning, I wanted to call it bourbon. I just wanted to call it blue, just like Kentucky Blue. That
Mm-hmm.
was the original, just kind of like name. And again, just a nod to Kentucky, and that's something we're super proud of, and that is the part of, I think, the history or the DNA of bourbon that we'll never, I think, walk away from. And we do want to embrace of just being like truly from Kentucky and having that root there. And then blue being so significant to Kentucky, when you think of kind of all the things of Kentucky culture. It's the bluegrass state. You think about horse racing and the blue ribbon. Even on the, I love basketball, NCAA. There's a deep connection to blue as a college color there, with Kentucky, and so it just felt like really fresh, and also, part of the story that we weren't like really focused on was that Jesse, who I talked about earlier, grew up. He actually grew up directly across the street from where Elijah Craig grew up. So his family's
Wow.
house, Elijah Craig, the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
the father of bourbon, I guess. His family house is like directly across the street, which is in very close proximity, to like the body of water, the river, I guess, which is called Royal Springs, where all the
Mm-hmm.
original kind of bourbon was first kind of produced out of. And so Jesse actually played in that river as a kid, and that was like a big part of his past. And officially it was called Royal Springs, but they used to call it just Blue, like the Blue Run,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of like long and trailing. And so when he kind of told me that, I was like, that's a super
That's
amazing
an amazing
story. And the
name.
name,
Yeah.
the name just sounds like really fresh, I thought. And
Mm-hmm.
again, super modern. Um, and so we ran with it. We ran with it. No, again, no pun intended with that one either. Sorry.
You're doing good.
It's
You're on a
just
roll
happening.
today.
It's just happening. Yeah. And so, yeah, in terms of like the creation of the bottle, again, we had our mission statement down like really quick. And again, the kind of like the big things we wanted to ensure with our brand was to make sure we were creating a brand that's inclusive. I think that's something that's been missing from the industry for a long time. When I say inclusive, I mean who we're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think generally speaking, like the heritage of maybe whiskey and American whiskey and bourbon, has talked to maybe a pretty singular demographic. And again, for us, like, why? There's no reason. Like, it's amazing, and so like, why are we leaving people out? And that was part of the opportunity. So, um, inclusivity, again, we didn't want to get into this unless we had the best product, and we would continue to have the best product. So once we solidified that, we knew we were going to be aspirational. We wanted to, also kind of embody that, and again, another opportunity that's hasn't really existed, at least in terms of at least in terms of like really embracing it, I think, and again, if you look back at a lot of our competition, like absolutely, there's incredibly priced bourbon, like, more than any of us can ever afford, but it doesn't look like it, which is kind of like the weird thing, and that's like a little bit of like, it's counter to how I've always worked. It's like, if you're going to present something, or if you have a product that that is aspirational and is of a lot of value, then like it deserves the respect, all the way around in terms of like the entire experience you have with it, from packaging, etc. In this case. And then the last thing is just the opportunity to make sure it didn't feel so old, and we talked about that a little bit, but like, how do you embody a little bit of fun and maybe even youth culture right into the packaging? So all of those kind of came together to inform how we approach the bottle. And so part of it was like, well, I think the aspiration part and the modernity came to life with just like the really sleek lines of the glass. And then, like pretty soon after, again, not in terms of embracing, I think, like the premium aspect of it, we chose an ink that's actually has gold in it, because you can't get that level of brightness without actually infusing some gold. So our ink has 22 karat gold in it, and it's applied directly to the bottle too, just like super clean, right? To kind of like limit the amount of like distraction and disruption in the like beautiful glass. And then the butterfly came last, actually, and it was a long conversation, but from the get-go, I wanted us to kind of embrace some sort of an icon, and again, working with the companies I have in the past, I think the power of the icon, and eventually looking into the future someday where your icon can be your brand without having to say it's your brand, is something that I have always thought is like really, really amazing and cool. And on that, something that people can relate to too, and felt maybe a little bit different than some of the iconography that's happening in the industry today. And so the butterfly was, it was controversial at first, definitely, of putting something that may lean traditionally a little bit more feminine in bourbon, which maybe traditionally people think leans a little bit more towards masculine, but like, that's what I liked about it. I like that tension. I like that juxtaposition. And so I think it all came together pretty nicely. I'm pretty proud of that one.
The bottle is stunning. And I've got to say, I have been obsessed with butterflies my whole life. So when I saw that bottle, I was like, yes, this is different. This is cool. It's really unique. It really makes a statement when you see it, because it becomes a great topic of conversation. It calls for a conversation. Did you see this?
It does.
It's crazy. It's incredible. And little details like real 24 karat gold that's put into the actual bottle, something that most people wouldn't think about. But it goes to show the dedication that you guys have to the brand and to what you're trying to create as a long-term staple item that families need in their homes, that they use when they're gathering for weekend dinners or the holidays, something that feels warm, that feels like home, but that still feels cool. And that's a hard thing to blend. So I love the bottle. That was the first thing that caught my attention. So it's so cool to hear the story. Sneakerizing bourbon, though, like, let's talk about this. Everybody and their mama goes crazy when there's a new sneaker release, especially from Nike. We know that, I mean, listen, these Air Forces are like a nightmare to try to get. You got to be on a list, or you're going to pay like 10 times the price. So to think about that in bourbon is like revolutionizing the entire industry of bourbon. So in your opinion, what's the comparison of whiskey versus the millennial market today in the space that you're trying to create? Because I feel like you're so innovative in the vision that you have as a team for it. It's kind of like you're in your own lane.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I mean, it's a little abstract for a lot of people, right? In terms of like, again, thinking of whiskey and thinking of sneakers, like those two don't necessarily lineup. But here's the other interesting thing on that, like real quick, is believe it or not, like there's a lot of people that have passions for both and crossover. That has like kind of nothing to do really with the brand necessarily. That wasn't the idea of like, how do we get people that are into both? But there's like, and this is like just a discovery since we've been in the business, but there's like a good amount of people that like have a sneaker room and then have a whiskey room, so it's kind of interesting. And I think maybe that just proves a little bit of the point earlier where it's like both can be objects of desire, right? Both have extremely strong communities around them in different ways. And both are kind of like meant to be shared in different ways, but bourbon maybe more literally like share with friends and family, and sneakers more of like share your passion and share your knowledge and your insight, but in a funny way, like people don't really understand this, but like sneakers aren't just for yourself, right? You're wearing them so other people can see them, so it's kind of like you're putting sneakers on for everybody else a little bit, and so I think both of those things have become like very interesting for us, and certainly for me. And then I think in terms of like the millennial and bourbon and sneakerization, I think similarly, like sneakers are rooted in two worlds, right? They're rooted in the past and the DNA. I mean, the hottest sneaker in the world right now was designed in 1985. And it will forever be an amazing sneaker. But also, it's about like innovation and truly building for the future, in terms of like what's that next amazing product and technology. And I think, bourbon's not all that different, right? It's rooted, of course, like we've talked about, it's rooted in the past and in this amazing kind of American story. But there's a constant desire to push bourbon somewhere new, and that's been there from a technical side, I think, but there's been so many like almost unspoken parameters about like what bourbon is and what it can look like and all this, that like it hasn't really got there. And so I think I think in terms of the millennial consumer, I think the millennial consumer is probably like less enthralled with, again, your grandpappy's attic recipe, and more enthralled with like, dang, like what is this and where is it going, and like what's new and what's fresh, and like what else is there that I could try from this brand, and what are they doing, so it's almost like, and I guess that's where we sit a little bit, is we're not trying to rehash the same story over and over again. And it's more like showing, I think, hopefully like the future of where bourbon can go and where spirits can go in general.
And I think that's making a major statement, because you're finding the right marriage between both worlds. I mean, we all know millennials, big spenders, for one, just from a business standpoint. But second, wanting to create a staple item that has longevity, much like the sneakers. I mean, that's always a very exciting thing, right? Next big sneaker drop, everybody wants it. Yeah. When it comes to bourbon and the whiskey space, it's a little dated. It's not really cool for the younger generation. I never hear people talking about bourbon. It's always like vodka, Ciroc, and why? Because those are staple items that are being marketed to the younger generation. They look cool, they look fun, and it looks like something you want to have and share with your friends. But for bourbon, I don't think there's any brands that are really standing out and making that statement that makes it exciting again, that makes you want to go party with your friends, or makes you want to kick back at the end of a long week for an executive that has an incredibly stressful job. I mean, all points that are super multifaceted to really any age demographic, regardless of where you are in the world. And being able to share those moments speaks a lot, which, by the way, I've been looking at your pullover hoodie, and it is really dope.
Thank you.
For everybody that's listening, Devon has on this really cool pullover that's Blue Run Spirits, and it's obviously got all the markings for the whiskey brand. And did you design that?
I did, yeah.
Simple,
We
but like
we did
everything it
this.
needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the idea, right? And again, we're that's my role with the team, is just kind of curating our look, from whether it be social media to obviously packaging to any type of merch or promo stuff that we give out. And so
Hmm.
again, like this is something new. This is something we were very definitive of, very from the beginning, of like creating something that felt different. And so from all my partners might call me a little bit anal, to be honest, but like I'm very kind of like, no, like it needs to be this way. um but I think that's the right thing to do, and again, back
Yeah.
to what you were saying, like, this isn't this is something that needs to have a different experience, and that's with every kind of touch point.
It's like, go figure. You sound like a genuine, passionate creative. What creative is not anal about something that they're
Yeah,
putting, their heart and soul into? Because at the end of the day, it's like your baby, right? You're curating it,
absolutely.
you're putting it together, you want it to be a success. It has to be a success. So,
Right.
seeing what you guys have accomplished so far, being sold out in just a few minutes on your first launch, to, getting a great response from all the handwritten notes, a little bit about you for people that may not know. I mean, I'm curious myself. When you were a kid, what was the dream? How did you go from, I don't know, whatever your dream was as a kid, to being a creative director for multiple global brands?
Another good question. Funny enough, like when I was a kid, I just wanted to have a graphic that I designed on a t-shirt. Like that was the dream, and actually, just give a little bit of context. So I grew up in California, Southern California, and as a kid, my big passions was, like, as a lot of Southern California kids, like skateboarding, like beach culture, surfing,
Mm,
snowboarding. And so again, the people that inspired me when I was young were in the pages of like the skateboard magazines, and the graphics that popped off shirts and boards was always just like, and it kind of still is, to be honest, like looking back, is just like the I don't know, the be all of like cool graphics, and
yeah.
just coolness. And so um again, when I was little, and I've always liked to draw, it was like, oh dang, someday if I could have like a t-shirt that was one of, from one of these brands with my design on it, I think that would be it. And actually, I did work in that industry for several years right out of school, and it was fun, and it was, definitely a learning experience. But you soon realize that, like, quite frankly, it's almost like looking behind the curtain of Oz sometimes, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, this was amazing, but maybe I aspire to something a little bit more. And so from there, I think, I realized my passion was like more than just graphics. It was, kind of all forms of like creativity and product
Mm,
creation. And so that kind of led me up to the Bay Area, working with, bags, so primarily like utility backpacks. I work for North Face and Jan Sport, some big backpack brands, and got my feet wet a little bit with kind of, color, graphics, materials, product, etc. Worked for a couple other kind of like streetwear brands there as well. Um, and then one day I got the call from the swoosh, and that was a while ago. It was 10 years ago maybe, and that's a call you kind of have to take, right? Um,
right.
wasn't looking for a move at that time, but again, you see that number pop up with Nike Inc. and you answer it right away. And so,
Not a call you decline.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't send that one to voicemail. But that's where I'm at, still today, creative director, the most amazing brand in the world. I'll put that on par with Blue Run Spirit, a little bit different maybe, but two
Maybe
two
neck
best
and
brands
neck,
in the world.
kind of.
But it really is, and again, a lot of, I think, a lot of the approach of what we do in the spirits industry is set up by, or I should have said like charted by sneaker industry and by a lot of the principles that Nike set forward back in, the 70s, right, when they started, which is pretty amazing to say that about a brand. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, I think ultimately, ultimately, I will always be inspired, I think, by sneaker culture. No matter, I think, what we do or where we go, I think sneaker culture is the probably one of the only, let's just say, cultures around a specific product that truly transcends more than just one type of person or one age group or one demographic or one location or one city. Um, it is cool for everybody in different ways, right? And
Yeah.
so, I don't know. To me, that's just like so insane that a company can do that, right?
It says a lot about your personality too. I think it's kind of like a statement to who you are, how you put clothes together, what you wear, like especially for sneakerheads. I mean, it's like a thing, right? To
Yeah,
talk about what's the latest thing out, or even vintage ones that came out like 10, 20, 30 years ago. People still talk
yeah.
about those designs, which is insane. For you, would you say that that street culture, the sneaker culture is where you get your greatest source of inspiration when you're working on a new project?
Yeah, I think so. I'd be more specific of like the people that are involved in that world is probably where I get a lot of my inspiration.
Hmm.
And it's funny, and now and not to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but like streetwear,
Hmm.
again, back when I was growing up, streetwear was truly that. It was tees and hoodies and graphics, right? And then fashion was something different. Fashion was what happened in New York and Paris and Milan and the likes. But if you look at what's going on now, it's actually like streetwear, which has become more than just t-shirts and hats and hoodies, but like is actually informing the runway.
Hmm.
And for people that follow fashion, um, look, I mean, probably one of the greatest fashion designers of our generation, who unfortunately just passed away, Virgil Abloh, came from streetwear. I
Mm.
mean, it came from like the roots, right? And so and again, before he passed, he was creative director of Louis Vuitton, the
Mm.
utmost of of the upper echelon of fashion, right?
Yeah.
And fashion houses. And so that is also like, to me, always amazing. And I love that from an inspirational standpoint. And maybe relating back to bourbon, it's kind of like, I guess, in the same way of bourbon maybe has been perceived as one thing, as maybe a little bit more, I don't know a better way to put it, but kind of like blue collar working man, the South, and it's like, well, actually, like bourbon is a very complex and sophisticated spirit. Like, why wouldn't that be actually informing the rest of the industry,
Right.
if we did it right, And so I guess in that same way of just drawing kind of parallels between both worlds. Um, yeah, again, it's cool. It's really cool.
It's kind of interesting because I've spoken with several. I mean, I call them kids. It's not like I'm that old at this point, but the younger generation, late teens, early 20s. Everybody wants to party, right? So everybody talks about what everyone's drinking, what the new mixed drink is, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And whenever I've spoken to them and they ask me what I drink, they always say, "Well, whiskey's boring. Rum is boring. Why would anybody want to drink that? That's not cool." I'm like,
yeah,
what do you mean it's not cool? You should make it cool. And, thinking about how you're perceiving everything, your vision for it from a creative standpoint is so different from how the general public may perceive it. And I
yeah,
think that there's a
yeah,
lot to be said about that because that's what creates new trends. That's what creates evolution, new lanes, something different that makes people talk about why it makes it different, really. I mean, because that's
yeah,
really what
yeah,
catches people's attention. People like to talk. So if
yeah,
something's new, everybody wants to be the first one to jump on it. Why is this cool? Why is this exciting? Why is something that has been around for generations all of a sudden cool? Why is it hip? Why is everybody posting about it on social media? And then you have people like you that are trying to reignite a flame that seems like it's been going forever. but it hasn't been shown in a different light. And I think that
Yeah.
that's really different for, Blue Run Spirits to really have the, um, what is a politically correct way of saying this? I mean, for lack of better terms, for just having the balls basically to walk into an industry that has been so complacent in a comfortable space with what's expected, to come in and say, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do it this way. And
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. I think that is so
Yeah.
cool that you guys are so passionate about merging two industries that culturally have been made acceptable and fun. And I think that's a big part of it, right? When you think of having a drink, you want it to be a fun experience when you're with people. And nobody really stops to talk about that, right? It's just like what's on the
Yeah.
shelf. Um,
Yeah.
so, of all the things that you do when it comes to design, obviously you're a very busy man. So I'm sure trying to figure out a work-life balance and a way to stay sane in the midst of all the ideas that you probably have going on in your head 24/7. Where do you find like the comfortable zone for you when it comes to creating new ideas? Because I'm sure you
Yeah.
have this project, you have your things that you do with Nike. I mean, like you said, you've been with them for like a decade. For those of you that don't know who Devon is, he's the senior creative director for Nike for the global men's footwear, correct? So
Correct. Yeah.
no pressure, right? I mean, you've got to come in, you
Yeah, a
really
little
got
bit.
to, really kick ass. So when you're finding that time for yourself to create something that's for you, something that's new, something that's innovative, what does that creative space look like?
It's a really good question, especially right now. COVID has made a lot of our lives very, very challenging, right? And so, like, pre-COVID me, I'm a big advocate. Like, I
Mm,
love cities, different cities, and I have my favorite. But I love different urban environments, because there's so many similarities yet so many differences. From again, what New York to LA to New York to Paris to Berlin, right? Like they're all places with very, very driven and colorful people and scenery and happening, but the nuances between them is like what's so energetic to me, right? And so
mm,
inspiring. And so um and I think just naturally, like, you take yourself outside of your radius of where you live, and your eyes are open in a different way. And so it's almost like your I don't know, your brain can't help but like taking in and being inspired by new things. So, obviously, it's a little bit tougher to travel now, or it has been over the last couple of years,
mm,
and so for me, I think, I guess I'm blessed with very creative and interesting people that I see on a daily basis through friends that I'm associated with here, and also I'll say, like, the coolest one of the coolest things about working with Nike is, like, nobody's from here. Like, I'm in Portland right now, Portland,
mm.
Oregon, which is an amazing city, by the way, not to knock it, but literally nobody's from here. Everybody comes here,
Yeah.
which makes this like really kind of interesting um dynamic of, like, we're all from different places, literally all over the world. It's a global company. Some of my best friends are from the far ends of where I grew up, whether it be, I have friends from New Zealand, from Africa, from Europe, of course, and so, like, coming together in a city that's like not really ours, in terms
Hmm.
of where we're from, is pretty cool, because it's like this weird thing of, like, yeah, we're all here and we're experiencing it together, but we're all bringing our own, like, little piece of our kind of like past and where we're from here to kind of like celebrate and ultimately, I guess, inspire each other. And so I don't know, maybe that's a long-winded answer of, like, look, you got to surround yourself with interesting people. I don't know, simple as that, right? Or else, it's going to be tough to to kind of come up with new ideas, I think, and have those conversations that are going to level you up, right?
Well, it's the mental stimulation, right? For a creative person, it's like trying to stick them on a single lane, not traveled road. You need something
Yeah,
that's like a highway. It has to be intriguing, interesting, fun, exciting. It has to be all the things all in one, I think, for a creative mind anyway, to keep you fresh, right? Keep you fresh, keep
yeah,
you
yeah,
evolving. And I love the answer. I didn't think it was long winded. I love the honesty, right? Most people are like, oh, it's like a standard answer, but I love that I mean, that's the truth. Interesting people
yeah,
make life more colorful. And when you're creative and you can't get to your creative inspiration, which would be for you, sounds like traveling globally
yeah,
or within the US, you have to find a different way to source that because otherwise you stay kind of stagnant and you can't grow. So, for you, looking back on your journey so far, has there been a pivotal moment at any point? Because obviously, with COVID, life changed
yeah,
drastically. I never thought I'd live to see
yeah,
a time where I'd be like, you remember when we had COVID and we couldn't go
yeah,
outside?
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
crazy. So, has
yeah.
there been a moment like that for you?
Yeah, there's probably been a couple, but I mean the one, if I like looking all the way back, and again, a little bit of context, like so San Diego, like I said, is where I'm from, but and San Diego's a beautiful city, and the climate is amazing, and it's very easy to get complacent with that, and a lot of friends and family were like, why would you ever leave San Diego? Like this is where people come to go vacation. Why would you leave here? And so I believed in that, to be honest, for like an early part of my life. And San Diego's amazing, don't get me wrong, love the beach. But I would say like at one point I did take a chance, and I just like got up and got out of there, and didn't really have much stacked up. The part I kind of glossed over when I was kind of talking through my career and journey was that transition from working in kind of like the skate and surf industry to then working for North Face. It didn't happen like seamlessly. Like basically, I was looking for something new. I had a buddy that, strangely enough, was in the Coast Guard, and he was actually working Golden Gate Bridge. There's a Coast Guard station under there, and he was just like, dude, I'm like living in the city. Like, just come up. You can crash on my couch. He's like, it's your kind of like ticket, open ended ticket. And I was like, dang, I'm just gonna do it, And so again, didn't really know what I would do in San Francisco. I mean, I knew, I like being creative and I have a skill set, and so thought it would be something around that. But it's not like I had a job lined up. Um, and so just like that moment, it was just like I kind of took myself out of everything that was familiar and went up there. I knew like literally one person, which is my buddy, who wasn't in my industry and was, like he's a childhood friend. It's not like,
Yeah.
he's like an industry buddy or something. Um, and it kind of forced me to kind of plot me right in the middle of San Francisco, and it just like forced me to like build myself up again, and kind of like help me understand what I wanted and what I was about, and like
Mm.
really establish like a foundation of like, all right, this is what I like and this is what I don't like, and so I'm going to take this path that's going to lead me towards what I like. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
and that put me on a kind of a different trajectory in a certain way, to where it was like it also opened my mind to like, well, there's a lot more out there than just what I was experiencing, in San Diego and in that kind
Yeah.
of like action sports industry. And it's like, from there again, it was like, well, now I'm not like I have no, like, again, San Francisco is another one of my favorite cities, but I have no loyalty to the city anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
so I'm free a little bit of like, now I can do what I want, like in a
Mm.
subconscious way, and it sounds kind of weird of like, why couldn't you do that before? But your family and your friends and your childhood and everything are in a place. It's a lot harder to leave than a place where you don't have that deep connection and roots. And once you take that step, it's like you've already done it. So now it's a little bit like, well, I can look everywhere now in terms of
Hmm.
things that interest me or that I could get involved in. And so I would say that's probably like the single biggest kind of probably moment, at least from a career perspective,
Yeah.
in my life. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible to think, if you, okay, so looking back to when you were in your early adulthood stages, let's say like 20, 21, could you have imagined yourself where you are today?
Um, Probably not. No. Yeah. Um,
That's amazing. It's amazing how
I'm
you
not
see
sure
life, happen.
yeah, it is. I think it's like I'm not sure if I was clear enough back then to even think that way, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you think a lot smaller. Where it's just, like I
Yeah.
said, it's just like, dude, all I want is like a graphic on a T-shirt that sells in a store. That would be amazing. And then from there, it's like, oh, it'd be cool to have like a collection at some point, And so it's like it was smaller, versus like, oh, someday I'm going to be like, whatever at Nike, right? It was more of just like smaller thinking, but like as
Mhm.
time goes on, and maybe that's also back to that last conversation of like taking yourself out of an environment like
Yeah.
consciously helps you also think a lot bigger and also see a bigger picture, just like inherently. It's like, well, you're no longer like kind of trapped in this like way of thinking that you have been, just by the nature of like that's what you've known. And so it helps you probably, help me, I would say, like just think in like much bigger terms, right? Of like, well, dude, like, yeah, maybe it's not just about a graphic t-shirt, or a hat. Maybe it's like this is like something where I could drive like a true like enterprise vision, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that level of confidence too, just kind of comes along with it of like again the exposure and working outside of maybe like your comfort zone and having some successes then lead to like more and more and more to a point then when you're just like, dang, well, now I'm here. Like, this is wild. I didn't think
Yeah.
this could happen. Yeah.
That's that's such an incredible way to just have a quick flashback at where you started versus where you are today, and then to be transitioning to create a whole new way of looking at a traditional space. That's kind of mind-blowing
Mm.
when you look at it
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
this
It
this is
is.
happening.
It is. Yeah.
Do
No,
you
I
get
look,
No,
I
no, go
don't take
ahead.
that for granted either. Yeah.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the dream is to do something you love, inevitably, whatever that looks like. And to see the transitional evolution that you've had over the years and still maintain humility, still have integrity, and still be constantly pushing yourself to evolve on a personal level, creatively, I think that speaks volumes to your success and also the marriage that you have in the new space with Blue Run Spirits and what you guys are trying to accomplish long term with your vision, as opposed to
Yeah.
just being
Thank you.
stagnant and complacent with the bare minimum. Let's create a bottle,
Yeah.
looks cool, looks whatever, and just keep it moving. You guys are really putting so much thought into creating something that matters, that says
Yeah.
something, that really has a voice of its own in a space that's become really dull. I mean, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm so excited. What are the plans for 2022 with Blue Run Spirits? Where can people buy it? Is it
Yeah.
only going to be exclusive to you guys still online?
No, so we have big plans 22 and beyond. And I would say this is look, we started in 2019 with essentially, a couple products. Super hard to get. We didn't release very much of it. That was our little kind of like I guess proving ground a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, 2019 went really cool. We got an amazing response. 2020 and 2021 we're like, hey, let's see if we can scale this thing a little bit and actually like put the focus into it, into building a brand and building a voice and building a community. And then 2022 and into 23, I think and beyond is like really about I think kind of maturing, and so with that being said, we're at a position now where we can offer our products to a wider audience. And so, yeah, we will be, to answer your question directly, we're certainly more than online only. for not for all releases. Some of them are just so small it doesn't make sense to do it anywhere else, and we want to make sure like we can again maintain a direct relationship in some form with our customer.
Mm.
But we will, yes, we have the next couple releases. So actually, next week, I think on Thursday, we're releasing our high rye bourbon, which is absolutely delicious, amazing. It's the second time we've released. It's our second batch. It's the first. Let's see. It's the first distilled product from the legendary Jim Rutledge since he's been retired, quote unquote. And the first batch again got pretty amazing reviews, and so we're excited about this one. And we have a good amount of product releasing there, and then we're also re-releasing our what we call our golden rye, which is a rye bourbon that we won, I guess most importantly, gold medal in San Francisco Spirits competition, and scooped up just about every other medal you can imagine. So from a quality standpoint, super on point. People love that one. Both those products are bigger quantities than they have been in the past, and so again, hopefully we'll give access to a few more people, and then it only kind of gets hopefully a little bit bigger from there. We have a couple new products releasing down the way here. We have a little bit of a lower proof bourbon called Reflection Bourbon, which we're extremely excited about. That's what I've been sipping recently. Really delicious. And so that one will have a pretty good availability as well. And then we have some special surprises and some projects coming along too that'll be a little bit more limited.
I am so excited to see what you guys continue to come up with, because my biggest thing was I want to try it. It sounds amazing. And then I was like, where do I go to get it? It's like it's sold out. Everything is sold out. I do have a question though, even though I feel like this is kind of to be expected. Can we anticipate some sort of like a fashion collaboration for Blue Run Spirits at any point in the near future?
Great question. Collaboration in general is something I'm like really passionate about. I think generally how I look at collaborations is look, you need to use the formula 1 + 1 = 3. Again, taking two brands that together couldn't make something that either brand could do alone, right? And so along with that just comes like the right partnership, and so it's we have a few conversations happening right now. I can't got to cross the T's and dot the I's legally, so I can't really talk about them. But I think fashion is definitely one that's really interesting. The digital space is really interesting as well. We have a pretty crazy conversation going on of like a little bit of how you can confuse the digital world and things like NFTs with physical product and the spirits industry. That one is also really, I think, intriguing and interesting for us. But definitely something you should expect from us.
I think it's pretty safe to say that Blue Run Spirits is going to come and completely disrupt the space with a huge splash. I think it's going to be a massive topic of conversation throughout the year. You guys are doing incredible things. Listen, I'm going to find a way to get my hands on one of the bottles. I can't wait to try it. If you guys end up making these as merch, the hoodies you have on, please let me know so I can go buy one. It is, if you guys get a chance to see this is so cool to see. I think that you're a great visual of what Blue Run is, because even in something as simple as a hoodie, it makes a statement. And I'm thrilled. I cannot wait to see what's to come this year and the next 5 years. I think you guys are I wouldn't be surprised if you took over the space in the next 5 years. I'm really excited to see what you do. Yeah. It's been such a pleasure.
So much,
Absolutely.
Super fun. super fun.
Yes,
Thank you.
for
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
anytime you guys have anything going on, feel free to reach back out. I'd love to connect with you again and see what you guys have going on, see what the growth is, the evolution.
Yeah.
And, I definitely look forward to staying in touch. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you so much for having us. Definitely love what you guys are doing as well. And look, on our side, it makes sense too. I mean, being a part of hype and hopefully we're creating a little hype on our side.
For
So
sure.
absolutely, we'll be in touch and we'd love to be on again.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Enjoy your evening. And I can't wait. Let's see what next month holds in store.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay.